And then Joe, hello, everybody. All right.
Hi there.
This week. This is how many of that? Okay, this one's good. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Now you can pull up your presentation if you'd like.
You wanna sit here?
Yes.
Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you doing? Busy, right? All right. Hey, how are you? Good to
I'm
see you.
Susan.
Or so we're being here, so we're hopefully. You're gonna look better, but. Yeah, right upstairs. Anywhere. You do.
I'm pretty certain it's not connected to the computer.
I love your shirt.
Thank you.
That's where I'm from.
Are you good?
Oh, yeah.
Someone check the.
Okay, I guess we're.
There.
I brought my paddle to the LA University.
Awesome, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right, that's good.
It's funny now.
Yeah. That's easy.
Yeah.
It's great. Haven't been back since I've been here. It's great.
It should go to the national park.
Next to Mickey.
The famous people.
Somebody else is gonna sit here, huh?
These guys attend everything.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't know. Is there somebody else supposed to sit here?
No.
I can sit here? All right, I'll sit here. All right. Hey, Mickey. All right. All right, all right. Yes. Oh, that's right. These bitter. Probably so bitter.
He's okay to do his beginning, maybe we have to pull that. Yes, his presentation is on back.
Oh, yeah. One of the biggest, it's the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I was thinking.
Go to a program Saturday, go see some staff, find out what they do.
I know.
I'm gonna put in the rest of the party.
There's all this discussion about the humongous, right? Of course,
Anything away from fire would be good.
yeah, well, that's next to JPL. You think they would let JPL put it out there, whatever. JPL would probably make it. Although it's weird that, Grand Canyon there, I think that Grand Canyon North.
Yeah, that was a big.
I was really surprised that.
Thinking the whole building should be about Flintstones, beige sandstone.
So is that in Pasadena?
Otherwise, why put it right in the middle of a funnel? Yeah.
They go on all good.
I guess they thought it was back in hand. The winds and so it's. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. We gotta get it on night.
Putting a building too close to the edge. Find out what's parking lot is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Keep going. I will. Where's the charge? Intermediate advice for the second building. Much worse than this.
Some homeowners seem to be building these fortresses in the same line of mountains. I guess, I mean, there are people experimenting. Well, it managed to do some buildings that resisted fire. So I don't know. Yeah, I suppose you have to fall off the concrete or something.
Chimney made it fine, the whole fire.
They don't want to rent it. It was already up for one of the magazines.
Sure.
I don't.
We're handing these out now.
I'll take an extra there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Share one.
Do we have it on fire?
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Joe, can you let everybody else in? Yeah. That's okay.
All righty, I'm gonna stand here.
Jared, is the idea to transfer that forward over to here? This?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that'll be good.
We're into it.
All right. Chris, how are we? Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jared. We're still figuring out where our meeting home is post Eaton Canyon, and so we're figuring it out. We were at Deb's, and Deb's has been so kind to us. We wanted to try this out here because this is a tradition, and it feels like a family tradition, and so a nice little space like this feels very appropriate for tonight. So anyhow, my name is Jared Niger. I'm the executive director, and I want to welcome everybody at home as well as here. Thanks for coming. For the folks here, we have iced tea, lemonade, water with lemon. It's very fancy. Cookies, gluten-free cookies. And for the folks at home, I mean, if that's not the reason to come in, I don't know what else is. So first off, we have the photographer here. Omar took this wonderful shot. Omar, do you want to real quick you speak into the microphone so people can hear you. You want to say anything? Yeah, real quick. We'll just introduce you. If you want to say anything real quick, very, very brief about the shot.
Howdy, folks. So that's
Out of the way.
I'm right away. Howdy, folks. I'm Omar Eloy. That's an American bittern and a pretty rare bird for Southern California in general, and they're very secretive. So this guy he only comes out for about 5 to 10 minutes a day over at Bayona Creek from the observation platform. Took me 5 tries to get this particular bird, and I have dipped on another one 6 times. So 11 tries total. We got it.
It was worth it. It was worth it. Okay, so now we're gonna jump into real quick the things that are what we've been up to lately. So field trips. So and for you folks, don't worry, I'm not gonna be standing here all night. Don't worry, you'll be fine. So field trips, Alex Coffey, who took over, of course, from Darren as our field trip leader. He's bringing up another batch of birding this fall. So once again, we're always adding field trips. It's always changing and adapting for many reasons. So just go on to pasadenaaudubon.org/field trips, and that's the way to get the most up to date of what's going on. And we have many coming up, I believe, just right around the corner. But if for some reason, science or whatever isn't, you're not catching a spot, we have some great open bird trips coming up in October that are for the whole public, and there is no limit to it. So definitely catch us then too. Next, the Haha Manga Habitat Project. Helen, do you want to say anything? I put you on the spot, but Helen is, first off, let's thank Helen for all her work and Darren. They are doing a lot of great work over there. I'll hand the mic and then just stand on the other side of the screen.
Okay, what should I say? Hi, everybody. I'm Helen, and along with Darren, I help out at Hahamongna. We have a wonderful site that we've adopted in the northwest corner of the park, just in front of JPL. And we've been pulling invasives for the better part of 2 years now. And we've been slowly expanding as our sites get more native and cleaned up. But if you're a sicko like me and love to weed in your free time, come join us. Next work date to be determined, but get in touch with Darren if you'd like.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, Helen. Yeah, some really good work. Birds and Beers. So Birds and Beers is one of my favorite events we do here. And I don't even drink beer, so that must be a really fun time. So this one, the theme is we're going to have another bird quiz, but this one is from the future because it's an online bird quiz that you're going to do on your phone. Joden, our new community engagement liaison, has something brewing, no pun intended, for this. So we'll see you here. That's next Wednesday, September 24th, 5 to 8 p.m. at the Wild Parrot Brewing Company on Colorado Boulevard, more east towards Allen. And oh my gosh, this is the event we've been fighting for. This is movie night at the Gamble House as our special members event. And Chris and I are going to do a little pre-talk about the birds. Chris and I are film nerds, so we're gonna the challenge will be not to talk too much because I could go on and on about this. So that is at the Gamble House on the lawn. They're going to project the film on the lawn. I think it'll be a beautiful evening. That's Saturday, October 17th, 5 to 9 p.m. The screening starts at 7:05. And for the tickets, don't go onto our website, go onto the Gamble House's website, because this is a Gamble House event that we are the guest hosts of. So that's where you're going to get your tickets, is gamblehouse.org/events. And hope you enjoy it. And you know, we love the birds, but gosh, there's so much to talk about with that movie. Yes. Oh, you know what? Maybe you're right. It is Friday. It is Friday the 17th. You're right. So I apologize for that. Thanks for catching that. It is not Saturday, October 17th. It is Friday, October 17th. That's when it's screening. So my apologies. Thanks for catching that, Ira. It's not Saturday. It is on Friday. It's on October 17th. So Friday, October 17th. Thank you for catching that. October monthly meeting. So that's next month's monthly meeting. How birds fly. Chris, I don't know. Do you want to say anything? I don't know if you want to come up and can you do that? Okay, great. Chris is our monthly meeting booker, and he can talk to you a little bit about this.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Right. So this is first of all, I want to say this is next month is going to be Zoom only, because our speaker Peter Cavanaugh is up in the Pacific Northwest. And he is two things you need to know about him. One, he is a superb photographer. His work has been in Audubon magazine, many other publications, many times. And he has a beautiful and informative book called How Birds Fly. And so, I mean, the title is pretty much self-explanatory. So if you've always wondered, you know, how the heck they're doing that, next month you're going to learn. And as I said, the photography, the photos are just gorgeous. So that's online only in 1 month. So see you then.
Great. And then do we want to do a little intro for tonight's speaker?
Oh,
I mean, they know.
yes, yeah. They are truly the epitome of people who need no introduction. This is your what 30th year? 31?
24.
Only 24. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, these are newbie birders here that barely know one end of the bird from the other. But yeah, this is the 24th year we've been thrilled to have the knowledge of Jon and Mickey, and two of the greatest teachers that we any of us have access to. And so I think let's just turn it over to you and let's see if you can stump us all. Yeah.
Applause for Mickey. We're just gonna do a little toggle of the screen real quick. There you are.
Okay, they've offered us to sit down, and that we're 24 years older than we were when we started. So we'll be right here. First of all, thanks for coming, both you at home and those here. I want to say a quick word about how we put these together this time. It was amazing. Jon sent me a bunch of slides, a whole bunch of slides. I put in a bunch of slides. We had way too many. We pick out the best of the best and put it together into a program. We did it by phone, finalize it. So we never met. We know each other, but we never met for this program. That's amazing. Well, you'll find out if it's amazing or not. So we're ready to go. We're going to keep this under an hour to the best of our ability. And maybe Jon would like to start with this sort of a bird in the water.
Is it possible to lower the lights a little bit, or we need them on?
So the lights that we need in those, absolutely.
I mean, they don't have to be off, but people would.
Well, it's either on or off, unfortunately. Here.
Was that all right for you, Chris? Okay, so we'll go like this. It'll be easier to see. Anyway, it's always fun to start these programs off for the year in September, an unexpectedly different venue right now, but the aim, Mickey had kind of discussed the origin of this program, but we'd like to put together kind of a mixture of slides, not necessarily anything really difficult or really rare, but a variety of birds and then talk about not only identification, but distribution, status and habits of the birds, and hopefully that adds to your understanding and knowledge of our local bird life. So our first slide, probably everyone has recognized this as a duck. Now, female and eclipse male ducks, especially dabbling ducks, can be very, very tricky. They all kind of look the same. They're all brownish and mottled, and so what we've got here is a duck. You can't really tell size objectively from a photo with nothing to compare it to, but this is a rather small duck. It's kind of warm, kind of brownish beige on the side, let's say. It's got a fairly large spatulate bill and a little bit of a face pattern, but not too strong. You can see a bit of an eye line there and a cheek patch. But this happens to be a cinnamon teal. Oops. So the other thing, the only thing you need to concern yourself with once you've learned teal are blue-winged and cinnamon are the two tricky, very close together ones. Green-winged teals are very small and petite. Blue-winged and cinnamon are very similar. Blue-winged, this comes close to a kind of a blue-winged teal face pattern, but a blue-winged teal will be a colder, more defined face pattern, and also have a smaller, less spatulate bill. You can often see this kind of buffy cinnamon brown color on the side of cinnamon teals, but this is one of those species pairs that I think often gets misidentified just because there's a lot of variation, and probably female blue-winged teals don't get misidentified that much, but female cinnamon teals probably more often get identified as blue-winged teals when they have kind of a face pattern like this, and they look quite similar. So look for a larger, more spatulate bill on the female cinnamon and a less obvious face pattern. And a lot of cinnamon teal have just a plain brownish cinnamon colored face with no pattern whatsoever. And both of these teal are primarily migrants and winter visitors. There are very small numbers around you can encounter through the summer, but primarily around the last month or so and through winter and spring, you'll see cinnamon and blue-winged teal in our area.
I feel the same way about ducks as I do about hummingbirds. Learn the males first. The females are usually hanging around, but the males are giveaways on most of our ducks and hummingbirds. I learned my ducks at Leg Lake looking at the males and watching the females with them. So once in a while you can catch a couple species of doves on the ground. I didn't mean to give it away, but these are doves. And you can catch two species at once. Of course, the lower left bird is very well known to us. It has a special thing about it. It's also the only bird that nests in all 48 lower states. That's a little fact I looked up and found once. And then the other bird looks considerably larger, the upper right, and it's much paler. And that's probably the best single clue if you see these in flight. A big pale dove should be suspicious that it's not a mourning dove. The tail is squared off rather than pointed. The pointy mourning dove tail is a helpful hint whenever you get one. So the lower left is a native bird. The upper right is from Europe and Eurasia. And once in a while I'll get this. So Eurasian collared dove, I think it started out around the Carolinas and it moved west at a tremendous speed, like one of the fastest moves across the country to reach California. And now it's going north and we're getting it way up. First it was exciting to reach Monterey and then the Bay Area. Now it's beyond up into Northern California. So the Eurasian collared dove is non-native. If you squint your eyes just right, you see a little band of black right there, which is a neck collar. It's easier to see in a real bird. Slides are wonderful, but they're not the best way to learn birds. Get out in the field and watch how they move, watch how they fly, where does it land, what habitat is it in. So this is a very urbanized bird now. We have a lot of urban mourning doves, but out in the country, these drop off and this is a bird throughout the country. You can take this.
Yeah, then there's more than two kinds of doves, obviously, in our area. Those are two quite common ones. This is one you might see in LA County, but it's quite rare in Los Angeles County. More regular in Orange County and further to the south and east through Salton Sea area and into Arizona. But some key features of this bird, it's kind of in shadow, but you can see it's got a very stubby little tail. You can see this scalloping on the breast and head and this kind of bluish tint here, little pinkish bill. And otherwise the wing kind of looks like a mourning dove wing, but those other features that instantly eliminate mourning dove, but this is a common ground dove. And quite a rare visitor to Los Angeles County. This one was actually down by the San Gabriel Coastal Spreading Grounds last winter, I think, along the edge of one of the ponds. That's a really cool place to bird. You never know quite what you're gonna find.
All right, I took this shot, I can't believe it's 2014, but it was at the San Gabriel River, right near Whittier Narrows, just upstream. And the little guy in the front is easier to recognize. These aren't ducks, even though they're in the water. And we don't get that upper one very often. So the lower bird should look familiar. It's a stubby little, the smallest of our local grebes, the pied-billed grebe. And I think you can just see a black mark toward the middle of the bill that makes it pied-billed. But the other bird is a yellowy bill, kind of an overall dull look, but a reddish on the neck area. Reddish on the neck area.
Is that a clue, Mickey?
No. But it is reddish on the neck area. And then there's a white chin. Otherwise, it's not very exciting color right now in the winter plumage, or basic plumage. So once in a while these show up. I think Castaic Lake is a good place to get one in the winter. And it's not that one. So redneck grebe and pied-billed grebe. We were supposed to leave on vacation the next day, but I ran down to see this bird. It was certainly new for LA County for me, or new for Whittier Narrows. So.
And this was at the San Gabriel River, San Jose Creek confluence, as you said.
Right.
And Andrew Lee was covering that 1 year on the Christmas count. And I said, sure, we can cover that, great. And he comes back with a redneck grebe, which was, I believe it was the first for the count. So pretty cool. You never know, again, what's gonna turn up where. You walk up to a body of water or somewhere and you're like, who knew that was gonna be there?
A beginner might mistake this for a Clark's or Western grebe, but it's really not so similar. The bill is more stubby, thicker at the base. The face is more plain, not black and white like on the other two. So.
We've done cormorants before, but it's always kind of a good review. If you're along the coast, you have an option of generally 3 cormorants, double-crested, pelagic, and brants. If you're inland, up until about 10 years ago, there was only one option, and that was double-crested cormorant. That was basically the only cormorant you were gonna ever see away from the immediate coast or within a couple hundred yards of the immediate coast. And that's what this is. It's a big-bodied cormorant with a big head, pretty short tail, and the key feature is to look at how this base of the bill in the scular area is shaped. And the shape of the bill, so keep that in mind. So just, as I said, until 10 years ago, you didn't have to think about a cormorant inland. If you saw a cormorant flying over a quarter mile away, you knew it was a double crested. If you saw 10 cormorants out on the lake at Pudding Stone Dam, you knew they were double crested. But fairly recently, I think 2016 was the first county record, we got neotropic cormorants. And that was a big deal at the time when the first 1, 2, or 3 showed up, and they were first, I believe the first record was at Benelli, Pudding Stone Reservoir. And since that time, they've not only increased in number, but not even on the eBird review list. If you submit a checklist, you don't have to submit a photo or any kind of documentation anymore. They're that relatively common. Now they're still well outnumbered by double-crested cormorants, but they are increasing and is largely climate change driven. As the name suggests, neotropic cormorant, it's a bird of tropical regions generally. They were down at the Salton Sea for quite a while before they moved up here. Again, checking the base of the bill, this inverted V is the best field mark, or one of the best field marks. They do not quite see the whole thing here, but they've got a much longer tail proportionally than double-crested cormorant. And in alternate or breeding plumage, they've got this very sharp white outline at the base of the bill, which also distinguishes it from double-crested. But the shape alone and the smaller size, if you see them together, is very obvious. So now you have to be on the lookout for neotropic and double-crested any time of year, anywhere in the interior, away from the coast in the county.
Double crested, you should say neotropic. So now nesting in like Whittier Narrows, Lake area, quite a few nests every year. So they're really growing population. So just like this is not a duck, so it's kind of an easy bird to identify to its family, and that's a hummingbird. But which one? We have about 6 regular hummingbirds in our area, and then rarities possibly. But this one, to me, it's kind of, while it's pale, it's also got dinginess on the belly area. It looks like it's just coming into some dark markings on the throat, but it's not a male, so we have to, at least not an adult male. So we have to work through what kinds of female hummingbirds this could be. And overall, it's actually looking kind of big and chunky, and the Anna's is one of our largest hummingbirds relative to the sizes of others. So if you see a kind of big looking hummingbird, and then this time, this would probably be summer or fall, you would get this kind of juvenile plumage. Fairly short bill because it's a youngster, and John pointed that out just in time to change. We had it as a female, and it may be a female, but it's a juvenile off the nest. Looking right there on most birds, if it's a juvenile, it'll have soft tissue right there, and they're usually either yellow or pink. And I'm not sure if I see that,
I
but
see a little pink
yeah.
right there, and that bill is probably a little bit shorter than an adult bird would be. So hummingbirds start with the adult males, as Mickey said about ducks. Learn those, learn their shape, learn their behavior, and then you start to work on the female and immature hummingbird, which are one of the trickier groups. Fortunately, we don't have that many species to deal with in Southern California, but study is the best way to get to know these. There's 2, we have Annas and Allens are the 2 really common coastal slope hummingbirds, which in some places outnumber one another depending where you go. And the Allens, of course, have rufous coloration somewhere that's obvious on the females and especially on the males. And then very good. So, and one of the other local hummingbirds, anyone wants to hazard a guess? Not too many options left after, it could still be an Anna's, but. So the other, sorry? Close,
Yes.
but we've got a pretty long decurved bill, very clean, pale underparts of these kind of big rounded primary tips here. So this is actually a female black-chinned hummingbird. Now, this is one you're only going to get in spring and summer, like March through August, maybe into September. It's a lot longer, skinnier hummingbird generally than Anna's, although posture can change frequently, it makes it difficult to judge. But they do have a rather long decurved bill and very relatively clean white underparts, which kind of differentiate it from Anna's general. But unless I have really decent looks, I still get confused over hummingbirds. You've got to have a pretty good look to see all the field marks. But again, this is not a bird you're going to see in the winter ever.
I like what looks like a little rounded head on the black chins, and they have a neck. Many hummingbirds look like their head's placed right onto the shoulders. This guy has a neck, and this lady, I should say, and more of a rounded head look. Also, it's rarely talked about in the field guides, but they have a forked tail, if you can see it in flight or when it first approaches.
And a pretty long tail, relatively.
So we're comparing 2 shorebirds here. If you look at the very front of your book in the shorebirds, you'll see the plover. Plovers or plover. I think you can go either way though.
Yes, I would.
Yeah. So the bird in the upper left, it's much more brown, even speckled golden color. The bird on the right looks much more plain gray, grayish tone. There's other differences. The bird on the lower right has the thicker looking bill. Bird on the left has a strong supercilium or eyebrow. And we have beautiful speckles of beige. The books call it yellow. I don't call it yellow. It looks more like orange or beige colored speckles. Maybe golden is the right word. And so we think what we have here are the common plover on the lower right is the one we expect most of the time all through the fall migration and winter. The upper left bird, everybody's been going down to Bayona wetlands to see Bayona, not the wetlands as much as Bayona Creek. To see a Pacific golden, who I think's been coming back, presumably the same bird for many years in a row. They're smaller, more slender, more delicate looking, more colorful.
Why is
Yeah.
it called black belly when the belly is white? And the black?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. So in the alternate, when it's getting ready to breed, they come up with a much more striking black and white coloration. And the belly is a big black spot.
Okay.
So this is a winter bird. If you saw it down in the next few months, they would be looking about like this. Good question.
We don't see too many in alternate plumage, but they're striking. When you do see them.
So to be clear, that upper left is a rarity, and people would drive 30 miles or more to go see one. The one on the right, you'll get that early in your year.
Yeah, we always look at a few shorebirds and a few flycatchers just to keep it interesting. This bird is gonna be one of our more common small shorebirds, kind of the default peep of the very small shorebirds. The one on the left is a juvenile, the one on the right is an adult. And this is the common little tiny sparrow-sized shorebirds that you're gonna see along our river channels, Malibu Lagoon, at Bolsa Chica. And at times, the other species can be in, equal or near equal numbers, but this is kind of the one you're gonna see more often in more places than anywhere. Things you should note, aside from this nice bright coloring and brownish coloring on the adult, this very petite, slim, slightly drooped bill on both of those birds, black, and pretty striking feature of these yellowish legs. So that in combination makes this a least sandpiper. Makes both of these least sandpipers. And quite common from July through April, even some into May. And the legs are always a good place to start to differentiate small shorebirds, peeps. If you see one with yellow legs that's really small, it's gonna be a least, but beware, they can sometimes get their legs smeared with mud, and then they look black, so it's always good to rely on a variety of features when you're identifying these birds. The little kind of streaky breast band here that cuts off mid-breast is a good feature for this bird in any adult or juvenile plumage. And again, the bill shape is excellent mark.
So we got a repeat on the lower right, so we just gave you that one away. The upper left bird, right away, what I see is a really clean white look underneath, clean white belly, white up to the chin. And doesn't look as brown as the other bird. I think of least sandpiper as the brown sandpiper. This upper left is more gray, but it could fit several sandpipers. But right away I look for the black legs, making sure it isn't all mud. And then the bill is much thicker and heavier. It's a little longer and droops slightly. So the least has a little that spiky thin bill, and the western sandpiper has the thicker bill, and it's very white underneath. So I come to a riverway or an edge of a lake, especially a lagoon or a riverway, and I look right away, look for anything that's pale like that upper bird compared to the least. And there's about 15 more things we could say about these in different plumages, and shorebirds can be frustrating. You just gotta keep using your book, and best of all, go on field trips to the coast and riverways where you can learn these.
Shorebirds don't make it easy because most of them have an adult, alternate or breeding plumage, a winter or basic plumage, and then there's a separate and distinct juvenile plumage for young birds, which you can see both throughout most of the summer in our area for many species. But it's repetition, going to look at birds in the field, studying them. If you have a camera, taking pictures and studying those photos. And when you get home, and also your field guides are very helpful. But it takes a little while to learn shorebirds. And then our next bird, kind of a nice flight shot. You can probably tell it's not a gull. It's got this long red, slim, droopy bill, very long wings, pointed, forked tail. Anybody want to take a guess, since we're trying to do a little bit of the quiz aspect?
These guys know.
Turn, yep. Idea of what species? Caspian's getting close. The only tern that shows a very slim, long drooped bill like this, not too red. Caspian's will be blood red. This is kind of an orangey red, but would be an elegant tern. The long, slim wings, they live up to their name in their shape and their flight style. But the bill is a very distinct feature. And in breeding plumage, this flat cap doesn't help much because both royal and elegant terns, at least for a portion of the year in breeding plumage, have the same color pattern. But the bill is a really good mark. This is almost a year-round bird. You see more certain times of the year, but they can turn up almost anywhere. Almost exclusively coastal. There's a few inland records here and there, but this is the bird you're primarily going to see and look for right along the coast.
I think in midwinter, the royal is the expected bird, the elegant can be around, but royals are more common. So the difficult comparison here is royal versus elegant. And this doesn't have the dark orange bill or thicker bill of the royal. But it took me a while to be able to call these in the air. So this is a small white bird with long legs and the bill, and right away it kind of looks like it's in the heron family. And if it's white and it's small in our area, it usually is a snowy egret. But this one's showing a all yellow bill. We know snowies have a black bill. Snowies also have yellow feet. You can see one foot there on our side is showing up it's gray like the legs. So this looks like a stubby, short looking bird, smaller than a snowy. So what is it?
Is it a cattle?
It's a cattle egret. So this one's showing a little tinge of alternate plumage or breeding plumage with the rusty colored cap and down the nape. I think I'm seeing less of these than I was 10 years ago. At Leg Lake, for instance, we've had counts of 17 to 20. And I'm not seeing them anymore in any numbers. One of the newest things that's just happened, we have a Western cattle egret now and a so-called Eastern cattle egret. The Eastern is not Eastern United States, it's Asian. So the Asian bird has now been seen in the tips of Alaska and in Hawaii. I'm only good on this because I read yesterday about it. And so this is the cattle egret you're going to see across the US. Don't be confused with the word Eastern, it does not mean Eastern US. It's one cattle egret across the way. So if you like the bird up in the Aleutians and on Hawaii, you have a slight chance of seeing one of the little more colorful Eastern. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So,
yeah. Stranger things have happened, but we probably won't have to worry about one in California for a while at least. Well, we always like to throw in a couple of hawks. So there's a variety of things we can talk about with this slide. Now, we've got an adult bird on the left and a juvenile bird on the right. These are both, I would have said a year ago, I would have said these are both accipiters. They're accipitrine hawks, but they're in different genuses now. This is still in genus Accipiter, this is in the genus Aster. So they've been split into separate genuses, but they still are one of the more tricky identification problems for most birders in the US. So it's got a long, thickly banded tail, both of them do. Similar shape. So the bird on the left has a small rounded head. Looks like a pretty complete, extensive dark crown leading down the back of the neck. A little red eye helps us know it's an adult, as well as this rusty barring underneath. The tail is pretty long. All the feathers are pretty much the same length. So that makes this a sharp-shinned hawk. And in the juvenile plumage, it would look very similar to this bird, which is a Cooper's hawk. But notice this much larger head. Now in an adult, the Cooper's hawk, the dark cap would only extend to about here. And it's got a pale nape right here. Otherwise, it looks quite similar to a sharp-shinned. But it's a slimmer, much larger, significantly heavier bird. I shouldn't say much larger because there's a lot of sexual dimorphism in these hawks, and a large female sharpshin can be almost the same size as a smaller male Cooper's. So size isn't always an easy factor to differentiate. One of the best features is the tail. You notice these outer tail feathers are very short comparatively and graduated from the central feathers as you go to the more outer tail feathers. Significant length difference, whereas these are all the same length. And that's accentuated in flight as well, whereas the sharpshin have a slightly rounded look to the tail in flight. Cooper's generally has a much more rounded tail and a broader white subterminal band. But the legs and feet are more robust in Cooper's hawk as well. Juveniles, as I say, are pretty similar. You generally get more crossbarring on sharpshin hawks, but there are some intermediate birds that have patterns pretty similar to this. The one helpful thing is that Coopers are going to be found year round. They were not doing all that well in the 1970s because of DDT, calcium deficiency causing eggshell cracking. Since that time, when DDT's been banned in North America, they have made a really significant comeback, and they are just everywhere. They've adapted very well to suburbia. I see them around my house every day and hear them, as probably most of you do. But that's the hawk you're going to have year round. Sharpshin, in general, they say it outnumbers Coopers 2-to-1 in the North America. I would say here almost the reverse is true. Generally, in our experience on Christmas counts and locally, you see a lot more Coopers than sharpshin. Granted, sharpshin are generally a little more secretive, tend to find more secluded perches. But it's a bird you're going to start seeing around mid-September, right about now, and they're present at least through April in some numbers. But it's not a bird you're going to see in the summer. So if it's June, July, or August, you're pretty safe to say it's a Cooper's. Although there was a couple of summers ago, there was one along the Los Angeles River, I think in July, sharpshin hawk that was documented. So pretty interesting record.
I think Ken Kaufman has said that these two birds have caused more separations among spouses than any other. Yes. So here we have a little thicker looking bird, kind of a chunkier guy, shorter tail. Looks like a thicker, wider, shorter tail, hard to see in this angle. These birds are speckly looking, checkerboard pattern. But on the right, we have probably a little younger bird, doesn't quite have its crossbars on the breast developing, but the orangey bars, just like on that sharpshin hawk, are developed on the one on the left. These two birds can easily be confused with a Cooper's hawk at a distance, and I've been side by side with another good bird leading, and we disagreed from a distance on whether it's Cooper's or another bird. This is a buteo, so it's one of the bigger hawks with broad wings, a shorter fan-shaped tails. But in flight, it's even easier. Or you can hear them when they're agitated. They seem to be agitated all the time. But
Very vocal.
pretty good for red-shouldered hawk. This is an easier one when you get a full adult. With the solid red color on the upper breast, the barring across the rest of the body. Now we can see the broad shoulders of a buteo. And this guy has a little paler head than I'm used to, but I think it's okay. There's an eastern red shouldered that looks a bit different from ours, but out here we have one species in California. So red shouldered hawk is a comparison to red tailed hawk. You see a big hawk. I don't think the expert birders do this, but most birders say that's a red tail until proven otherwise. The top birders are looking for the rarities, so right away they want to look for field marks for something less common. This red tail outnumbers these for sure, and this bird hangs around riparian areas, primarily oak woodlands and creeks with riparian trees. And they do fairly well even in the cities with that kind of habitat.
Yes, I think this is our last raptor, although we could do a whole program on raptors and have. But this, you might notice at first glance, looks like another, probably a soaring hawk, a buteo. It's got pretty long rounded wings, not super rounded, and relatively short tail. Very mottled underneath. The primaries and wing linings and secondaries are kind of the same tone of color, so no real contrast there. Really thickly mottled underparts, whitish undertail. But these long, relatively thin wings and relatively pointed for a buteo would kind of lead us to think this is probably a Swainson's hawk. And this is actually a juvenile Swainson's. either intermediate or dark morph. I didn't research it as that thoroughly, but you're gonna see a different color pattern on a light morph bird with white wing linings and dark flight feathers. So this would be a whitish, especially in an adult. It's very conspicuous contrasting. But we get these birds starting in February and through April at least. And they're actually passing along the foothills in pretty good numbers. I mean, in the hundreds over the course of spring, and probably thousands, because we are unable to count all of them. But sometimes you run into a good sized flock, like along the San Gabriel Mountain foothills, heading west in spring. March and April is a really good time to look for these. And you might see one or two, or you might see 50 or 100 in a flock. It's one of the few raptors that is a flocking bird, travels in groups. They breed sparingly in the Antelope Valley and further north up in the Owens Valley and the Central Valley, but we don't get. There's one or two coastal breeding records, but it's a quite unusual occurrence.
They winter all the way down in South America, Argentina especially. The prime food there is grasshoppers. A bird like this is eating a lot of grasshoppers. Then that happens, they happen to pick up DDT or DDE by eating pesticides used in South America. We're still sending DDT to South America. It's illegal here. Other places can still buy it.
Right, you think that's actually in the US.
That's a good question. I should be careful because it was a while back, I heard it was still being sold from here. So you can double check on that.
Okay.
So I guess it's my turn.
Either way.
This is a upright little passerine bird sitting on a branch, kind of on a high angle, not it's horizontal, way off horizontal. It looks kind of grayish brown. Overall, it has a interesting vest that it's wearing, gray vest. Gray vest is unbuttoned most of the way up, not all the way up. Has a fairly long tail, but it should especially have long wings. And I think they're hard to see here, but they go down to almost here. And that is beyond the vent. Another neat little mark is the vent on this group. Genus always has blotches under the vent, under tail coverts. So it's sitting upright, it's gray, it's up high often. You could have trouble between olive-sided flycatcher and western wood pewee. But the bird we have to compare to is the one on the right. And this is one of the Empidnax flycatchers, different genus. The turkey Empidnax. Roger Peterson put in one of his books, he just doesn't think it's a good idea to that's what you are. You didn't quite say it.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Got it.
Okay, you probably recognize this as likely another flycatcher. Kind of thick, straight bill, often with a crested appearance. Flycatchers, many of them have kind of a little crest. The one thing that sets this group apart is this rust color, both in the wings and often in the tail. If you see that in a flycatcher, and you should be able to identify a flycatcher by posture and behavior. Sitting on a perch, flying out to catch insects and back to another perch of the same perch, very distinctive behavior. And they snap insects up with that bill, often with a loud pop, you can hear it. But if you see a flycatcher with these rust coloration in the wings and tail, you know you've got probably one of 4 species in California, either ash-throated, brown-crested, great-crested, or dusky-capped. And the most common one by far is going to be the ash-throated flycatcher. And this bird does have kind of an ash-colored throat. It's kind of a plain bird overall, not that colorful. The most conspicuous thing, wing bars and this rust color in the wings. This is the common migrant from March through September or later, and a pretty common breeder locally, kind of in the oak woodland, chaparral, or foothills and mountains and elsewhere. Pretty common migrant, as I say, and occasional in winter, not all that common. Now this comparison shot, that's a different species, it really accentuates the difference between these two, and given the same lighting, I don't think there's generally as much of a difference as this would seem to illustrate, but it kind of brings out the differences. This bird has kind of a dusky cap, another hint. Grayish throat, very similar to this one, pretty bright yellow underparts, and a little bit duller rust color in the wings and but otherwise quite similar. The bill shape, a little bit longer, a little bit slimmer bill. That can be quite evident after you've got some experience with ash-throaters. It's a conspicuously different, longer, slimmer bill. This happens to be a dusky capped flycatcher living up to its name in this picture. And interestingly, a dusky cap, we get a few vagrants showing up in late fall and spending the winter, but it's a pretty rare bird in Los Angeles County. Anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe 4 in a winter, in a good winter might turn up. But at that time, they can outnumber ash-throated flycatchers because ash-throaters are pretty much gone, as common as they are as migrants and summer visitors. They're gone in the winter. So if you see a Myarchus, which is the genus, flycatcher with this rust-colored wings and tail, if you see one in winter, odds are at least as good that it's a dusky cat as ash-throated.
That beautiful shot of the ash-throated is John's, and it makes the bird look gigantic. It
Same.
is bigger than the dusky cat.
Slightly bigger. So this is a pretty nondescript little bird, and until recently, you didn't have to worry too much about this species. But it's doing a bit of an explosion right now and for quite a few years. And if you get an adult male, it's easy, but this is not. This is a juvenile of this little guy. Streaky breast and dull brownish gray, moderately small bill. And so this is the plumage that might be more difficult to know what you have. Here's the same thing, but probably for sure a female. The upper left bird, I can't put an age on it, a sex on it, because to me it's not there yet. But the bird on the right being yellowy underneath would be a female. Then just to be tricky, the older females can develop reddish under there or peachy colored under the belly. Do we have a guess yet as to what is he? Nobody has a problem with the adult male.
Yep, somebody said vermilion.
Okay, vermilion flycatchers. Yeah. And these are now in your local parks regularly. They're nesting at Lake and other parks, Arcadia Park, regularly. And you can get 6 in a morning there, especially in the fall when the young are out. Yeah, the adult male is brilliant red, vermilion, and brown, and it's hard to mistake for anything else. And so we didn't show that one.
Yeah. So on to another group of birds. This isn't the greatest photo for identifying a bird, but it's gives us more than enough to work with. Things to notice are this bill, pretty thick, pretty short, little hook on the tip, if you can see that closely, although often in the field that's not even evident. But the bill shape is a pretty good mark. I always consider this eyebrow or supercilium. It looks like someone took their hand and just smeared the side of the head of the bird. It's a big, broad eyebrow or supercilium. And it's a stocky bird, plainish wings, greenish above, kind of yellowish green maybe below, some of that maybe reflection from the leaves. But this happens to be a warbling vireo. And a little more on that later, but another similar species here on the right. Shape and size of these two is very, very similar. But we'll notice the face pattern, this little area in front of the eye here, and kind of split eye ring, broader at the rear, same bill, stubby, short, hooked at the tip, pretty much the same color pattern, but if we can see this bird's wing, it would have two whitish wing bars. So guesses on that one? That's a Hutton's vireo. So that's a local resident of primarily oak woodlands, but they wander around. They're found in other habitats, or at least adjacent habitats, fairly common. They're most common in chaparral, oak woodland type related habitats. They're resident, as I said, present all year. Warbling vireo is a common migrant spring and fall, and fairly common breeder in our local foothill canyons and further up in the mountains. But very, there are only a few, and I mean a few, winter records of warbling vireo. They pretty much all migrate south. The other interesting thing though is now this has just recently been split. There's now going to be a western warbling vireo and an eastern warbling vireo. In this case, not like Catalinger, eastern means eastern US. I have no degree of confidence in being able to separate those two, at least not yet. So it's very likely we could be getting some eastern warbling vireos in California. I think some of you have been claimed and documented. I don't know, not sure if they've been accepted yet. I don't think so. But they're extremely similar in appearance. So you would want a lot of good photos if you encounter what you think is an eastern warbling vireo.
So here's a streaky looking bird on the ground, poking its head up, a yellowy eye. Kind of reminds you of a mockingbird, doesn't it? This was an uncommon visitor in the winter to Hahamanga a good number of years ago. And it's around now and then in various places. I've seen them in Santa Fe Dam once in a very lucky time. But to compare, an adult mockingbird on the right is plain, one of the most well-known birds. I think many states have this as their state bird. The bird on the left looks a little like a juvenile mockingbird, but they're streaky. This bird on the left has chevrons, dark upside down V's up and down the breast, shorter bill, and you'd expect this out in the desert somewhere or dry inland places. So we have a sage thrasher and a mockingbird. Quick story, I was going to lunch one day, one of our docents at Eaton Canyon said, there's a funny little mockingbird out here. It's got streaks all over the breast. I said, well, okay, it's probably just a baby mockingbird. I don't think I'll give up my lunch for it. I came back, she said, it's still here. So I went out and saw a sage thrasher out in front of the canyon.
And if you want to see sage thrashers, go out to the Antelope Valley in February and March. It's a common migrant out there. You can sometimes run into double digits easily in some places. And for breeders, they're further north up in true sagebrush, so Mono County, and that area east of the Sierras, much of the Great Basin. But if you want to catch them in LA County, other than, as Mickey says, a rare migrant on the coast, get out to the desert in February and March and just check a few spots, and you're likely to encounter one or more sage thrashers.
Yeah, I took. You go ahead.
Yeah, this is Mickey's slide, but it's kind of a good comparison shot. a lot of goldfinches, these plain. Pretty plain, I mean, they actually look kind of sharp, I think, but their body is pretty plain yellowish with no other markings other than the wings and wing bars. Those may be recognizable to most of you as American goldfinches. I always think of American goldfinches as brownish yellow and lesser goldfinches as greenish yellow, which kind of helps separate them. So one of these birds kind of looks a little different, and that's this one, although this is an adult male, so it's more distinctive. But it's green or back, yellow or below, although not in spring and summer when American goldfinches was just stunningly yellow. But it's got the full cap, a little bit different shape wing bar. A really neat feature to look at lesser goldfinch though is this white patch at the base of the primaries. Very distinctive in flight as well as often when they're on the ground or perch. And American goldfinch has sometimes a little white mark there, but nothing like the pronounced patch of lesser goldfinch. The calls are quite different. If you check your Sibley app or eBird has each species account has multiple vocalizations, but you can learn very easily the differences in vocalizations of song and call, and that's an easy way to differentiate them. Mostly we see lesser goldfinches predominate. They're the kind of the default goldfinch. Not that American isn't common. In some places they're quite common, but I'll often pick off American goldfinches when there are lessers around. I just hear one of them giving its call. Usually it's likened to potato chip. It's like, and it sounds very different from the lesser goldfinch, which is typically a. So picking them out by call is always helpful. And I'd miss a lot of American goldfinches if I weren't listening for the calls. Both are pretty much year-round residents throughout the county.
So this photo is intentionally on an angle for you, but if you're sharp-eyed, you'll see a very sharp pointy bill. It's probably a little longer than it looks, but very sharp pointy bill and a streaky bird. Wing bars pretty strong. It's streaked underneath. It looks a little like a baby house finch, but what is going on right here? We've got some yellow on the wing. And these birds are often in groups, feeding on the balls of sycamore trees or liquid ambers. They have a bill that can probe right into there and get the seeds out. So what is this? Yellow on the wing.
Siskin.
Siskin, pine siskin, yes, pine siskin. Very small, smaller than a house finch, and similar to its close relatives are the goldfinches. So you'll often get them together, and you get a puddle of water from overwatering out in one of our parks. It's a good place to watch for birds coming down to the water. These can be really high up in the trees, and you have to get your binoculars on them to look for field mice.
Numbers can vary from year to year. We get them in later fall and winter. You can find them pretty much anywhere. Sometimes they're present in fair numbers, other times they're pretty scarce. But if you're looking at goldfinches, it's always good to keep an eye out for a pine siskin or two. We've done this comparison before, but I think it's a good one to brush up on always, especially at this time of the year. On the left here, we've got what's kind of our default coastal slope sparrow. Streaky breast with a little central breast spot here, brownish, gray and brown striped head. Probably, if you've been out birding much, you recognize this as a song sparrow. Pretty common resident, mostly in any place that's near water, but even away from water sometimes if there's good vegetation. Year-round resident and pretty common. You get good numbers of these in good and appropriate habitat. And then we have a very similar bird on the right, a close relative. Pretty similar, the face pattern and underpart streaking and overall coloration is quite similar. Some differences we might notice though are a little more petite, slimmer, more pointed bill, finer streaking under the breast, not as coarse, and this kind of buffy coloration here by the mailer and on the breast. That will bring us to Lincoln sparrow. which is a very scarce breeder in the higher St. Gabriel Mountains, but we know it primarily as a fall migrant and winter visitor. More secretive than the song sparrow, but it's quite common in brushy habitat. And one of my favorite sparrows is Lincoln's.
So this bird, we could go on for a long time comparing several other species in this genus of sparrow. But the first thing I see is a really interesting face. Facial pattern is sharp and really stands out. It has a brown central spot in what they call the auriculars, oral as in ear. So it's an ear patch, auricular, and it's surrounded by a light colored rim all the way around. This bird has a little bit of an eye ring. It has a buffy color on the sides, which is important, and buffy across the upper breast. Pinkish legs, pretty long forked tail. So in general, a beginner might think this is a chipping sparrow. It's pretty close, got a rusty cap. In the winter, chipping sparrows look a lot like this. But if your bird looks really different to you, that's the one to study. And that's how you find a clay colored sparrow from back east, out here in California. So if we had time, we'd have shown you the other two lookalikes, the other Spizella sparrows in that genus would be chipping sparrow and brewer sparrow, and a couple of rare eastern ones, but we have 3 regular Spizellas out here.
Clay colored is the buffy, warmly colored bright one. Really good field mark is this laurel area here in front of the eye. In chipping, you're gonna see a dark line or dark spot here. In both brewers and clay colored, you're not. That area is just gonna be clean, same color as the rest of the face. And that's a pretty diagnostic feature for those 3 Spizella sparrows, chipping, clay colored, and brewers. This is the rarest one. Brewers is pretty common in the deserts. In regular and small numbers migrate on the coastal slope. Chipping is the default. They keep calling it a default bird, but it's the expected Spizella pretty much all over the coastal slope in fall and winter, and even in spring and summer now. They extended their breeding range down into the lowlands in several places in the county. So they expect to encounter more of those in that time of year in summer. This is one of the cooler sparrows, I think. Sparrows to me are like one of the most interesting groups and have some of the neatest birds. But the first thing you'll notice about this sucker is this really thick bill. And that's other than that, you've got a grayish head and back, brownish wings, this thick brownish spotting underneath. Undermarked on the other tail coverts as well, but the overall shape and color pattern should lead us to fox sparrow. There are sooty fox sparrows. They're in several groups: sooty, red fox sparrow, slate colored, and thick bill. This is probably, you could guess this is a thick bill, which is very similar to the sooty, but with a thicker bill. And this is the breeding race in our local mountains, Stevens Eye, which has about the thickest bill of any of the thick-billed group. That's one you can go up here to Buckhorn and beyond at those elevations, Blue Ridge, up near Wrightwood, and this is the fox sparrow that you're going to encounter in spring and summer. They're singing up there from the chaparral and pine trees quite incessantly.
When you're getting these for the first time, make an effort to use your field guides and put them into one of the 4 species groups. If you try to worry about every subspecies, there's a lot, and they interbreed, integrated up and down the range. So people I think are jumping to the 4 species groups and then grabbing subspecies out of it. These take a little bit of study. So anyway, it's easy to identify to species. More difficult to separate these subspecies.
Yeah. Oh, can I go back one real quick? I was gonna say the one reason we know this is a Stevens Eye subspecies is because that is the only breeding subspecies in our local mountains. So by default, it's a Stevens Eye. Another interesting thing for ground feeding birds often has these really long hind claws, which this bird does. That's typical of birds like towhees or fox sparrows that feed on the ground.
So when you jump backwards, that nail flips the dirt forward and they can look for insects and seeds.
I'll do juncos if you want.
Yeah.
So this one hopefully is pretty obvious to everybody who's been birding for any length of time. It's basically a sparrow, even though it's not called a sparrow, but it's very, very distinctive. And it's got a brown back, these peach colored sides, kind of a moderate length tail, and of course, this black hood and pink bill. So what we have is a adult male dark-eyed junco, Oregon subspecies, which is our common species locally. We know these as very common winter visitors. They also breed quite commonly in the foothills and higher mountains, and breeding has descended even further into the lowlands. They're now common breeders well away from the mountains, and have adapted very well to suburban life. And there are a number of subspecies of juncos. Another one that we get fairly frequently, often if you get a big enough flock of juncos, you'll find one or two of a different type in there. And this has got, rather than a convex hood like this bird does, it's got kind of a concave shape here. Grayish, it's not, doesn't have a dark head, much less contrast, a little brownish in the back. But this is a slate colored junco, basically eastern North American species, but a relatively common, as far as rarer birds go, relatively common migrant and winter visitor to our area. But the juncos are a huge complex and can be very tricky. And I think they're kind of fun to try and learn and just observe. And it takes a while to realize and understand the variation between and within each subspecies as well.
So here's looks like a fairly large chunky type passerine bird up on a branch. Sharp bill, but thick at the base. Think of juvenile birds as streaky, and so they camouflage better, and they lose the streaks as they become adult. This has a chunky head, right thickness of bill. It doesn't look like a red-winged blackbird, but I think it's a blackbird or something. And it's lacking a lot of strong marks that pick up in the adults. So, anybody? Experts? We think it's a brown-headed cowbird, juvenile. It's not an adult male with a brown head and a dark body. Black body, and females will be all smooth brown when they lose their streaking. So, and everybody knows about the cowbirds being a brood parasite. They lay their eggs in other bird nests. They've moved across the US, especially where there were bison and they lived with bison out here. They like to live with horses and horse pasture, open dirt areas, and we're generating more of them by having a lot of equestrian areas close to riparian areas. And so these Bell's vireos are one of their targets, yellow warblers, and those birds have been declining in part with cowbirds. But they got here on their own, they're not introduced, so hard to think of them as evil.
A little bit. All right. So we'll look at a couple of orioles. We've given the family group away here, but hopefully that can be obvious, fairly obvious. They've got tones of either orange or yellow, kind of a very close relatives of blackbirds, so a similar bill, long, pointed, slightly decurved, which is distinct from sparrows and warblers and most other passerines. But we have two common orioles here in Los Angeles County. They're both primarily spring migrants and summer visitors, although both do spend the winter in very small numbers. Easy way to differentiate females is the underparts pattern. This one's got yellow up here, yellow on the vent, and gray body, gray belly. This bird's uniformly colored yellowish below. Also has a little bit longer tail. At the right angle, this has a longer decurved bill. In flight, that shape is especially noticeable. You can really recognize these in flight and differentiate them from what's on the left is a Bullock's oriole, and what's on the right is a footed oriole. Their calls are pretty distinctive. Again, you can listen to those on a number of websites. eBird has a good variety of vocalization for every species, but underparts pattern is good way to start differentiating these, and overall shape. But it's a little bit longer on both the bill end and the tail end. They're both early spring migrants. They start showing up in March, linger through September or later. Bullock's orioles are scarce but regular winter visitors. Hooded orioles in LA County are quite rare. One of the best places to try and find them in winter is the Huntington Gardens, the desert garden at the Huntington. We get them there almost every Christmas count. In some years, that's the only place in the county that one's recorded. Occasionally, there's a couple of others. Whereas in Bullock's oriole, you might have a dozen or more present each winter.
So here's a kind of olivey green bird. It's a great photo. It makes it look pretty large, but it's actually shaped about like a warbler with a small thin warbler bill, thin legs. The tail is just out of view, but it's a fairly long tail. And there's another one, and you might think they're different. They're a bit different in the photos. The one on the right is more bright colored. Both these birds should show a bit of a supercilium, an eyebrow. I'm having trouble finding it on the bird on the right, but the upper bird has a little whitish eyebrow coming off just behind the eye. Of the three kinds of yellowish warblers that we have regularly, this is the most common, orange-crowned warbler. They have more green tone to them than the other two, Wilson's or yellow warbler. And anything to add? There's probably more.
Did you mention underparts streaking? I'm not sure.
No,
I didn't remember. Generally vague, blurry underpart streaking is visible on most of these birds. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see. But they're present year round fairly commonly with the influx of spring and fall migrants as well. It's kind of the quintessential little green bird. And this bird, interestingly, just didn't strike me because I usually separate it by other means, but this kind of reminds me of the vermilion flycatcher we looked at earlier. Kind of a similar shape, a little bit of a face pattern, and this yellow undertail. But it's not. It's very streaky underneath, like that juvenile vermilion, but it's got these white tail spots, very prominent yellow undertail, streaked underparts, obvious supercilium here. So this happens to be one of our relatively more common vagrants or rarities in LA County. It's a palm warbler. So we find them in fall and through the winter in very small numbers. Some years there might only be one or two. In big years, there could be a dozen or even more if we get a good count. But these birds are often foraging on the ground, and they're wagging their tail. It's another good indicator for that species. And of course, to separate it from a vermilion flycatcher, which is kind of similar, vermilion's always going to be perched up on a post, up on a fence. You might sally down to the ground to catch an insect, but then back up. Whereas a palm warbler is going to be foraging on the ground, or potentially in vegetation, as warblers do.
So here's one more warbler. Again, the three yellowy warblers we have, primarily yellow. This is the one that takes its name, yellow. One of the best marks on these, sometimes they're fully yellow. This looks a little whiter in the center above the legs. I don't know if this is a juvenile male or a female. Having a little trouble.
It looks a little bright for a juvenile.
Yeah. The undertail coverts are bright yellow. It has a little bit of white, sometimes even a yellowy eye ring that shows up. The undertail, you barely make out that the whole undertail is yellow. You see a warbler from underneath, and the whole undertail is yellow. You have a yellow warbler. A lot of yellow around the vent, undertail coverts, and on the head. Usually wing bars are showing this bird. Looks like it's molting, and it's grabbed a spider there, and I don't know what kind of spider that is.
Oh, do tell.
I knew you.
Because I don't know.
This spider puts both of its all its forelegs forward and forelegs in the back down. And they look just like pieces of bark that sit right on a narrow twig. So this bird has picked off and someday I'll remember the name of the spider.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've seen those before, but
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're called. And then a couple more sparrow-like birds that aren't sparrows. So these were a couple of shots from relatively recently, but in spring and fall, this is one of our more common migrants. Sparrow-like, but very evenly colored. These differences between these birds, I go, why do we show these slides? Because it's so difficult to explain why this is not a sparrow. But the bill shape is kind of distinctive. It's got a little bit of a curve here on the upper bill. Very plain, evenly colored. It's not streaked in any way like most sparrows are. Brownish. I think I see even a little kind of tint of blue coming in here. Maybe on this bird a little bit as well. A little buffiness on the chest here. These are both very young lazuli buntings. Now the adult males shouldn't be any trouble to identify. They're super distinctive and very brightly colored. But these birds can really be tricky the first time you see them. Their calls are pretty distinctive, kind of a call that you can hear frequently. Often, almost always hear them before I see them. But definitely one to look for in fall and as a spring migrant. There were tons this past spring moving through, just remarkable numbers all over. Migration as a whole this spring was kind of pushed on the late side, but the number of lazuli buntings was just remarkable this spring.
Okay, I'm the one that threw in a few exotic birds to finish off here. That number 3 in the lower left means we're down to the last 3 slides, thank goodness. And here we are with a gorgeous Halloween bird, orange and black, more red and black. The males are spectacular and hard to mistake for anything else. These are way at the end of your bird book because they're more advanced, so-called advanced. Doesn't mean they're better, it just means they're more recently evolved. This is the bird from Africa, especially old world. The adult male on the upper side is easy. The lower birds are females and can be much trickier. The bird they're most often confused with is grasshopper sparrow, and you might be wishing you could find a grasshopper sparrow. These are down in the low wetlands at the base of our dams in the flooded areas behind the dam with lots of grasses. You get northern red bishops. And they come in mostly in the fall. It's hard to find them in the summer. I think they nest here, but they're most easily seen around these low grasses in fall and winter.
These seem to have declined in the last few years. They used to be much easier to find along our river channels and, as Mickey said, flood basins, but still a few around, but seems like quite a bit fewer than there were before.
Yeah, that's why I'm having trouble getting them for the year. You can see the male from about a half mile away, easy to pick out. Females are a little more secret.
Yeah, always good to brush up on non-natives. As Mickey says, the Los Angeles County has a surplus of non-native species, both established and often one-off or two-off escaped birds that can be almost any bird from anywhere that might have gotten out of a zoo or an aviary or someone's collection. But this is another one that's well established and quite common, especially in our flood basins and river channels, but expanding elsewhere as well. This is with an adult bird, pretty distinctive. It's got a scaly breast, which should be a dead giveaway. Really thick bill, really heavy, thick seed-eating bill, dark brown, and it's kind of warm brown color. And these are juveniles in various stages. That's when it's got some of the breast scalloping coming in, and younger birds here. So these are pretty easy to find in weedy, grassy areas, scaly breasted moonians.
Luckily, I've almost forgotten the name. It used to be mannequin.
I was just trying to think of it and I couldn't think of what it
I
was.
couldn't remember. I'm glad when I can get the old names, but. Steel breasted and nutmeg mannequin, correct. These are spicy birds, Asia.
Yeah.
Here's one more with the bright red bill, looks similar to the other guys in coloration, kind of soft, warm brown, lighter underneath. Big conical bill, and they'll either be on the ground or going in and out, up and down into the trees. Maybe seen with other sparrows like chipping sparrows. So you watch for these almost anywhere now. They're quite common. This is a brood parasite. It nests in the Munia's nests. Up until a few years ago, nobody knew what their prey was, or the host. And John Garrett was one of the ones who discovered that they were laying eggs, as Kimball Garrett expected in the Munia nests.
Until
So
the
this is
later.
Pintail white-eye.
Right, that's the females, not the weird male.
The adult males are easy to recognize, and I had to throw one in.
Yes, that's it. There he is, out there.
They can be almost anywhere now, show up in a park. The males are always rare, these are big adult males with a super long tail. They get reported as scissor-tailed flycatchers or even fork-tailed flycatchers, but you can quickly learn this bird. It's an easy ID, but the other guys can look a little like other sparrows.
I would note, also, really young birds can have blackish bills, so they can be confused with Munias. But there are several differences that hopefully, with other birds of their kind that are more distinctive like this. Well, this one. But they can form fairly decent small flocks in winter. I had, I think, 40 at by the Rose Bowl Swim Aquatic Center one day a few winters ago.
All right.
I think we're pretty much on time. Oh. Wow.
All right. We got the microphone real quick. Do you mind getting the lights real quick for you? Well, thanks. Let's give one more round of applause for and John. Okay, folks. Well, that's it for this evening, and we have our birds and beers next Wednesday, and then we will have our next presentation just via Zoom on the third Wednesday of the month. I forget the exact date, but it's the third Wednesday of the month. So otherwise, thank you so much, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Beautiful idea.